Welcome to the CDA Institute's Geopolitical Update. I'm Josh Malm, Director of Research and Analysis for the Institute, and I'm joined by geopolitical expert Joseph Varner, Deputy Director of the Conference of Defense Associations and former Director of Policy for the Minister of National Defense.
Joe and I have taken a bit of a hiatus over the past few weeks, so we apologize for that, but we're back today with a vengeance. There's obviously been lots happening in the world over the past month or so, so Joe and I have a lot to talk about, a lot to dissect and discuss. So Joe, thanks for joining us as always. I'm looking forward to speaking with you about the events of the past few weeks, about your trip to Israel, about the election. So let's get down to it. For this episode, what are we going to cover, and what are the big topics that our audience should be paying attention to?
So stories this week that are of particular interest are, of course, Donald Trump's election victory south of the border, Trump's foreign policy, North Korean troops at Kursk, and the military strategic situation in the Middle East.
Why don't we address what is probably the biggest story of this week, President Donald Trump's reelection?
So former President Donald Trump was elected the 47th president of the United States, winning both the popular and the electoral college vote handily. Republicans have taken the White House, the Senate, and taken the lead and control of the House, which means the Republicans can dominate the legislative agenda for at least the next 2 years of a 4-year term. And here's the rub in terms of what to expect from President-elect Trump's foreign policy and how it could affect Canada. Trump's last administration was strongly opposed to illegal immigration, and based on comments in the recent presidential election, is still inclined to close the southern border and to eject migrants from the United States. Trump's Republicans are protectionist in terms of international trade. On America's close allies, Trump's view is that they are fair weather friends who rely on the U.S. to foot the bill for their safety, and that they do not share the defense burden in real terms, particularly NATO. And then they are nothing more than freeloaders. He has deemed Russia Europe's problem, Iran a nuclear threat to be deterred and contained, North Korea a partner to be muscled to a deal, and China the principal threat to U.S. long-term national security interests and a country to be contained in the first island chain. The previous Trump administration was focused proactively on Israel and the Middle East, as well as the Indo-Pacific, and that's not likely to change. That could be bad news for NATO and Ukraine. The former president viewed the Cold War era arms control agreements with suspicion and with some justification given Russia's constant cheating. Trump seems to believe these agreements hold the United States back in its dealings with China, North Korea, and Iran, and they're anachronisms to be confined to the rubbish heap of history. And while in office, Trump moved forward quickly on nuclear strategy geared to enhance deterrence, new weapons, and war fighting, while planning withdrawal or drawdown of long-time conventional U.S. deployments in Afghanistan, Syria, and even Germany. And he rejected the Obama administration's Iran nuclear deal. Trump was very inclined to use force, and he showed that when it came to eliminating terrorist leaders like Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and Qazi Soleimani, commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, Quds force. And so that kind of litany of different foreign policy positions will put Canada likely during the Trudeau administration here under great pressure, as it did the last time Trump was in office. And we could see, mass expulsions of migrants, some of which may decide to come to Canada, and we could be under great pressure on defense spending. And I think it's likely that we're going to see tariffs on Canadian goods. North Korean troops clashed with the Ukrainian troops for the first time in the last week on behalf of the Russian ally in and around the Kursk salient. And the Kursk salient is territory held by Ukraine in Russia's Kursk Oblast, and it's Russian sovereign territory. About 3,000 North Korean troops have found their way to the front line of the Ukraine war, and about 10,000 are in training in the area. And North Korean soldiers are expected to be fierce fighters, but how they will perform in Russia under Russian command is an open-ended question. I think we can expect this to be a particularly ugly and bloody chapter in the history of this war. And what technology assistance Russia is giving North Korea in terms of its nuclear missile and space programs for North Korean cannon fodder is a major concern.
Thanks, Joe. Now maybe we can pivot to something we often discuss on the program, which is the situation in the Middle East, especially with Israel, Iran, the war in Gaza. Perhaps you could give us a bit of a rundown on the situation and what's been happening over the past 3 weeks or so.
Well, Josh, as you know, I'm actually just back from Israel. I was on a trip with Exigent, which is a Canadian group that's interested in educating Canadians about the threats to Israeli security, but also to Western democracies. So from what I saw, and I did get to witness some of the activities from a distance, I can tell you that Israel is still fighting with the remnants of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza to the south. I watched 2 rockets launched from Gaza destroyed in the air and saw Israeli artillery and airstrikes against Hamas forces on the ground in Gaza. This is not ending until the Israelis get their 101 hostages back. And I think I can safely say from what I saw, all Israel is united in that goal. There can be little doubt that the remnants of Hamas and PIJ are attempting to reconstitute themselves in the face of the Israeli offensive in response to October 7th. We know now that in the north, Hezbollah was planning a massive October 7th of their own and is now reeling from tactical defeat along the battlefield border area with Israel in the north. They've gone from 50 attacks on Israel a week to 50 a day. This means at least 100 to 200 rocket strikes, rocket launches at Israel, most of which are intercepted and destroyed. From what I've heard secondhand and open source, every third Lebanese house on the border is either a tunnel entrance, a rocket launch site, or an ammunition storehouse. And the Israelis released the plans of Hezbollah to carry out massive attacks on northern Israel. There are signs now of low-level resistance from tribal leaders to Hamas and Lebanese Christians and Druze that are tired of Hezbollah in Lebanon. I can tell you that Gaza is not totally destroyed, but it's taken a heck of a beating, and the Israelis continue to search for their hostages and to create a buffer zone in both around Gaza and the Lebanese border. Israeli towns in the north are ghost towns. 100,000 people out of their homes since October 8th of 2023 and under constant rocket attack and threat from Hezbollah in Lebanon. And Iran continues to direct the remnants of Hamas, PIJ, Hezbollah, and its militias in Syria, Iran, and Yemen, and trying to undermine Jordan. Syria, a major transit and resupply center for Hezbollah, has taken a pounding, and it seems reluctant to face off against Israel, except in a token way. The Houthis in Yemen are showing signs that they may slow or stop their attacks on Israel and international shipping, but took a missile shot today that failed at the Israeli nuclear site in Dimona. And Iranian-backed militias in Iraq have increased their drone attacks on Israel and may be receiving substantial missiles from Iran as part of Tehran's latest planned tit-for-tat attacks on Israel. And to that end, we're waiting to see Tehran's much threatened attack on Israel and whether it is preempted by Israel or Israel and the United States. The future for Iran and its proxy militias is looking pretty dark in the face of a new Trump administration, and that is just 2 months away. So watch and shoot.
Well, Joe, thanks for this update. Thanks for catching us up to speed on what's been happening in the world over the past month or so. You're right. I mean, a new Trump administration is hugely hugely significant. So it'll be interesting to watch over the next few months and years to see how Trump's foreign policy impacts the global security environment, which, as we and everyone listening, I'm sure knows, is already quite quite turbulent, to say the least. So yes, as you said, watch and shoot, and look forward to having you on again next week, Joe. Thanks for your thought leadership.